Let's go. Okay, here we are. Today's Shofet is Shimshon. He's pretty famous. Most of us have probably heard of him. Maybe know a little bit about him, but we're going to look at his story. We're going to be skipping a little bit because his story is a bit longer than most of the other stories of the various types of Shoftim that we have here in the Book of Judges. It starts in chapter 13, Parak Yud Gimel, which in these Tanachim is on page 547. And unlike all the other stories we've seen of Shoftim, which usually start from the Shofet taking charge or rising up or being chosen by God, here we actually see Shimshon even before he's born. So, who would like to read?
To
yes.
13?
Yeah.
The Israelites again did what was offensive to the Lord.
Again.
And the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years.
Okay.
There was a certain man from Zorah of the stock of Dan, whose name was Manoah.
Yeah.
His wife was barren and had borne no children, obviously. An angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "You are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son." You've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Now be careful not to drink wine or other intoxicants or to eat anything unclean, for you are going to conceive and bear a son. Let no razor touch his head, for the boy is to be a Nazirite to God from the womb on. He shall be the first to be delivered, to deliver Israel from the Philistines.
Thank you.
Oh, what is this? Who's this?
Samson.
Yep. So who does this sound like so far? Someone said, this sounds familiar.
Samuel?
But we
I
get
can
the
hear.
different...
Samuel?
Like Samuel. Okay, Samuel's mother wants a child. She's
Yeah.
barren. She gets some kind of message from God that it will take place and that he's going to be special, must be treated special. Other barren women, Sarah. So Sarah, Rivka,
Rachel.
Rachel. Yeah, many of the matriarchs.
Common theme.
The Shunammite.
Yes, the Isha Shunamit. True, lots of barren women
And
who have
also,
children under special
Michal.
circumstances.
Is that her name?
Michal, David's wife, who doesn't
Yeah,
have any
she
kids.
doesn't until she gets sent over to the other guy.
Right.
She was
Okay.
sequestered. I don't think they had a lot of contact after a point.
Right. That's probably related. That's probably one of the factors involved in her not having any kids. Okay, but Manoach's wife and Manoach are together, but they don't have any children yet, and so they meet this angel who tells her, "Don't worry, you're gonna have a kid, but he has special rules." And the rules that the child will have to follow, you have to follow while the child is inside you. So no drinking wine or any other intoxicant. Don't eat anything that's unclean or impure. And he can't cut his hair because he is a Nazir. So let's flip back to the Torah
This is
to learn a
certainly
little bit
different
about
story,
Nazir. Huh?
Because the other, in the Torah, it's told from her point of view and her all the anguish, and here it's like you wouldn't even know that it was her until they said the Nazir, that your son, unless somebody remembers the name Manoah.
Right, she doesn't have a name. She doesn't have a name, and her emotional state is not described. So if you flip back to page number 200 and 92. 292. This is Parak Vav, chapter 6 of the book of Bimidbar. We have the laws of the Nazir. God tells Moshe, speak to the Israelites and say to them, explain to them, a man or a woman who utters an explicit vow to become a Nazir, a Nazirite, as it's sort of redundantly translated into English, if you can call that translation, to set himself or herself apart for the Lord. What are the rules of a Nazir? No wine or any other intoxicating drink. No wine products like vinegar. No grapes. And no grape juice or grape sauce, raisins, nothing made out of grapes.
Can you grapes?
Yes. And additionally to that, so one rule is no intoxicants or especially grape products. The second rule is no cutting hair. No razor shall touch his head, in verse 5. Because the hair of the Nazir is considered consecrated to God for the length of time that the person has the Nazir vow. And number 3, no contact with the dead. No impurity through contact with dead human bodies. And so even if their close relatives pass away, under normal circumstances, the Nazir is not supposed to be involved with their burial, with coming into contact with their corpses. If, however, in verse 9, if a person dies suddenly near him, defiling his consecrated hair, so you're a Nazir, everything's going fine, you're avoiding the wine, you're avoiding the grapes, you're avoiding the dead people, you are not cutting your hair, but then suddenly you're in a situation, there's an emergency, something happens, someone has some kind of medical issue, they pass away right near you, you become tameh. It's not your fault. But you still have to get some kind of expiation for it as if it's your sin, and bring a few sacrifices. When the Nazir vow is over, the Nazir also brings sacrifices, cuts off their hair, and then it's over.
Get stinking drunk.
Can we digress for a second? So,
Maybe, yeah.
So, being a Nazir,
Yeah.
was it something only for Hebrews, for the Israelites?
As far as we know.
Okay, so
I mean, other peoples could have had similar sort of
Sounds like a
pseudo-monastic kind of practices.
what was it? Was it like kind of a priesthood? Was it more of a? I mean, what's the genesis of it? Who became a Nazir? Why would you want to become a Nazir? What's the motivation?
So that's actually addressed by the rabbis of the Gemara, who point out that the rules of the Nazir come right after the rules of the Sotah, about what happens to a woman who is highly suspected of adultery, but it's not completely proven. And so they say that one reason why someone might want to become a Nazir is because they see what happens when men and women get into inappropriate relationships with each other, frequently surrounding alcohol. Alcohol, hence the wine and the grapes. Excessive focus on physical beauty, hence not cutting your hair. And I don't remember how the tum'ah of death goes into it, but maybe that's the message of if you become too involved with these other things, then your life is falling apart, you're neglecting proper human society, something along those lines.
So were they revered? Were they elevated in society? Were they a different class? Were they?
they were probably respected for what they're doing. They're consecrating themselves. They're taking on additional restrictions in a sort of ascetic kind of way. And so they may not have had a ritual function like a Kohen or a leadership function like a Navi or a Shofet. But a Nazir is something that someone did in order to be closer to God, train themselves in self-control, stuff like that.
Or were there any other Nazirs that were mentioned in the Torah, the Chumash? And are there Nazirs today? Those are two other questions.
There are no real Nazirs today. There are some people who may be pseudo-Nazirs. I once met someone who didn't take an official Nazir vow because it's sort of dangerous to do that when you can't bring a sacrifice to end it. But he stayed away from grapes and grape products, and he didn't cut his hair. He just wasn't an official Nazir.
Any other Nazirs in the Chumash? Besides
I think
Saul?
Shmuel Hanavi might have been a Nazir.
So how,
Also, I don't remember specifically.
Okay, thank you.
if it's has an end point,
Yeah.
this was surprising because he didn't take his vow. He became one right away. He wasn't even
Who,
old
Shimshon?
enough to make a vow when his mom brought him up to the.
Wait, Shimshon or Shmuel? Because Shimshon isn't even born yet.
Right.
Shmuel, his mother consecrated.
Right.
Yeah, Shmuel was also like Shimshon. Shmuel was pre-consecrated by his mom.
Yeah, so that's for life.
Yeah.
That's a lifelong.
So where does it say here that there's a limit on the time? And if so, why did
19.
Shimshon? Why was he a Nazir for life?
Okay. So we're gonna see how Shimshon's Nazir status is different than typical Nazir status. Let's see. Okay, in 13 it says, this is the ritual for the Nazirite. Zotarat HaNazir, when the day that the term of the vow is completed.
So it says it is a term. So, but is there a definite term? Is it supposed to be 6 months or a year? Or?
So I think according to the oral tradition, in the Mishnah and the Gemara, the rabbis assume that the default vow lasts for 30 days. But it is possible to do it longer.
So you just speak it as part of the vow.
Yeah. You would say, I am becoming a Nazir for however long you're doing it. Okay. But Shimshon is pre-consecrated by his parents at the instruction of this angel. And he's supposed to be a Nazir from when he's born, from even before he's born, because his mother has to keep it when he's in the womb, forever. So Manoach's wife goes and tells Manoach. And interestingly enough, she tells him, a man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very frightening. But what did the narration tell us? Who came to them?
An angel of the Lord.
Okay, so it says Malach Hashem, an angel of the Lord. She doesn't realize. For some reason, she assumes it couldn't have actually been an angel. She assumes it must be some kind of prophetic, holy person who just looks like an angel to her.
A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel.
Okay, she says, I didn't ask him where he was from, he didn't tell me his name, but he gave me all this information, and she passes on the message. So Manoach, in Pasuk 8, prays to God that this messenger from God, this man of God as he thinks it is, should come back and teach them some more. What are we supposed to do? Let him instruct us how to act with the child that is to be born. So God listens, the angel comes back, and meets with Manoach's wife.
So I'm confused.
Yeah.
After an angel gives his message,
Yeah.
he disappears.
Yes.
This one comes back.
Yeah.
He hadn't finished giving his message.
They
What's
needed
that?
more information.
Yes.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
They needed more
I'll have to
information.
remember that for the next time.
Okay. I mean, that's what they say. That's what Manoach asks for.
Is it? How important is it that it's mentioned specifically that Manoach wasn't present?
It's probably important for some possible different reasons. The one reason that's stuck in my head that I learned from a lecture a number of years ago is let's look at some of the details. So in Pasuk 9, she's out in the field, he's not with her, and the malach comes to her again. The next pasuk, she ran in haste to tell her husband. She said to him, Hineni ra'a elai ha'ish asher ba bayom elai. The man who came to me before has just appeared to me. The next pasuk, Manoach follows her, and he comes to the man and asks him, are you the man who spoke to my wife? Asher dibarta el ha'isha. So she uses the sort of generic term, he came to me. And when Manoach comes back with her to meet the angel, he says, who spoke to her. And so in this lecture that I heard a long time ago, I think it was by Professor Yair Zakovich, who's an Israeli Tanakh scholar. He suggested that the verbs in this part of the story are very specifically chosen in order to not let the reader make the mistake of thinking that this is some kind of demigod story like the other ancient peoples around had, like we're very familiar with from Greek mythology, for instance, where divine beings come down, mate with human women, and then they give birth to heroes. And so Shimshon is going to be a hero. He's going to be super powerful and strong, and the book doesn't want us to make the mistake of thinking, oh, maybe the angel, yeah, maybe he's a part angel. And so because the verb lavo, to come, is sometimes used in Hebrew in a way which in English is only slang, but in Hebrew is actually polite, it switches back and forth to say, what did they do? Nothing but talking. Just to make sure that we know that Shimshon is Manoach and Manoach's wife's kid, not Manoach's wife and this angel.
Why does the father ask Manoah asks what rules shall be observed for the boy? Nobody else asks that when they're told that they're going to have the child.
Well, the angel already gave them some rules.
But even then he asked, well, that's true. He gave the wife rules, so yeah.
Right, so maybe Manoach wants more details, or maybe he doubts it. It's sort of surprising that this is what you're supposed to do. And so we see the angel say, the woman must abstain from all the things against which I warned her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, or drink wine, or any other intoxicant, or eat anything unclean. She must observe all that I commanded her. So it basically just repeats what it said earlier. But now Manoach has the message directly. So looking ahead, if you just sort of skim through the next bunch of psukim, what do Manoach and his wife want to do?
Cook dinner.
Cook dinner for the angel. Where have we seen this before? Who else wanted
Abraham.
to cook dinner? Okay, so Abraham cooks food for angels. Who in Shoftim wanted to make food for angels?
Who's the guy with the grain? Was that
Threshing the grain.
Threshing.
Avimelech or something?
It was Avimelech's dad, Gidon. When Gidon gets his message, he wants to feed the messenger, and the messenger says, "Oh, I'm not going to eat anything, but if you offer it to God, it'll be accepted." So similarly here,
But the angels eat with Abraham.
true,
They don't eat with these guys.
right.
Strange.
That's true. It could be that it could be that they ate with Abraham because it wasn't obvious to Abraham that they were angels. Because they're described as men.
Yeah, 3 guys showed up.
Yeah. Which is interesting to think that Abraham would be less likely to recognize an angel when he sees it
Yeah, but he was-
than
he was-
Gidon or
he was-
Manoach
Whole
or
God
Manoach's
things were
wife.
new at that
He was
point.
hallucinating. He had
Oh, 'cause
just,
he was in
had
pain?
the circumcision.
Ah.
Yeah. I mean, and it was like 110 degrees, and he's sitting in the shade trying to stay conscious, and he passes out.
Yeah. So maybe he didn't know what he was seeing. Okay. Okay. So they want to offer it food. Manoach asks it, "What's your name? We want to honor you." But the Malach says, "Don't ask me for my name. It's unknowable. It's mysterious. I'm not going to tell you."
We'll just call you Fred.
Fred. Okay.
Was that because if you say a name, then the essence of the name has to happen?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that.
What's the issue of uttering the name? It's like, is the name the essence of something that can't occur?
Not necessarily that can't occur, but it might be the essence of what this angel is. And if you're just a human being, you might not be able to comprehend the full angelness of this angel. And so trying to say its name would be trying to comprehend its total mission and existence. Possibly.
It's always about intention, isn't it?
Yeah, intention's very important. Okay, so they burn the food as an offering. The malach disappears. And just like we've seen before in encounters with angels, they're scared they're going to die. Pasuk 22, and Manoach said to his wife, "We shall surely die, for we have seen a divine being." But she reassures him, "Had the Lord meant to take our lives, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and meal offering from us, nor let us see all these things. And he would not have made such an announcement to us." She is much more logical and sensible than he is. He is freaking out. They've come too close to the divine. They're going to die. And she's like, "Listen, God just promised us we're going to have a kid. It wouldn't make sense if we just die right now." So she gives birth. She names him Shimshon. Shimshon meaning Shemesh, the sun. Another possible reason why someone might be tempted to read Shimshon similar to these polytheistic demigod hero figures. He's named after the sun. He grows up. Vayvarchehu Hashem, God blesses him. And then the Spirit of the Lord first moved him. Like we've seen with earlier Shoftim, who sort of arise, they get their power, they get their motivation, and it's described as the Spirit of God pushing them or coming upon them. And so the Spirit of God is moving him, pushing him in the encampment of Dan, Machane Dan, between Sorah and Eshtaol. If you look back on the colorful maps of the first sheet, you'll see how it says here right on the coast, there's no tribal territory bounded off, but it says original land given to Dan. Because the tribe of Dan was originally given a block of land over there on the coast. This is why the Tel Aviv metropolitan area in modern Israel is called Gush Dan, the Dan region.
We were at the Dan Tel Aviv.
And so they
A
tried.
hotel chain.
Yeah, Dan is also a hotel
I
chain.
know.
Yeah.
It's not, it's
I don't know if it's based. I don't know if it's based in Tel Aviv. That could be why it's named that, or maybe it was named after a person named Dan. But the tribe of Dan was originally giving land on the coast near where Tel Aviv, Yaffo, etc. are now. They couldn't conquer it.
Right. It was Philistines.
Right. Because as we were coming in from the Yarden, the Plishtim were coming in from the Mediterranean. We hit each other in the land of Canaan, and now we have troubles like this where they're oppressing us for 40 years. And so the tribe of Dan are not settled in a homestead like the other tribes are. They're called a Mahaneh. They're still semi-nomadic, somewhere in the area where they're trying to settle down, but they haven't really gotten a real foothold there yet. They're maybe a little bit in from the coast, closer to Beit Shemesh.
But then it says down way up there.
Right. One of the later stories here in Shoftim talks about how they emigrate from the coast up north there and take possession of a homestead for themselves. Okay. So, let's look at this. Someone asked the question earlier, what's up with Shimshon and his whole Nazir thing? If he didn't choose it, how do these rules apply? How is it different than a regular Nazir? So the Mishnah...
Yep, you don't need.
Yeah, yes I do.
The Mishnah has a whole volume all about how to be a Nazir. And it's logically enough called Masachat Nazir. And one of the first things it does is it talks about the different types of Nazir vows we can make. One of which is Nazir Shimshon, a Nazir like Shimshon. And so if someone declares, behold, I am now like Shimshon, or they say like Manoach's son, or they say like Delilah's husband, who we've heard of, but we're not going to meet her yet soon. Or like the one who uprooted the doors of Gaza. Or like the one whose eyes were blinded by the Plishtim. Sorry for the spoilers. That person becomes a Shimshon type Nazir. You make a declaration that you're becoming a Nazir, not just any Nazir, a Nazir like Shimshon. And you refer to him by name and by description of the things that we know about him from the story here. And what's the difference between a permanent Nazir, because you can be a Nazir for a time period, or you can just say, I'm going to be a Nazir forever, and that's it, and a Shimshon type Nazir, which is also permanent. A permanent Nazir, a Nazir Olam, can lighten the weight of his hair with a razor and bring 3 animal sacrifices if it becomes too heavy. There's a way to get out of it if it's necessary. If your hair is too much for you, you have to bring sacrifices, but you can cut it a little bit. And if he becomes impure, he brings a sacrifice in the impurity, like a different Nazir, like any other Nazir. A Shimshon type Nazir, on the other hand, cannot lighten the load of his hair, even if it becomes too heavy. There's no way to deal with your hair. Your hair is totally consecrated forever. But if he becomes impure through contact with the dead, does not bring a sacrifice on the impurity.
So what does that mean?
It means that a Shimshon type Nazir does not have consequences for becoming impure through contact with
But
death
he's still-
the way that a regular Nazir is.
So he's still a Nazir, even though
Yes.
he can't sacrifice?
Yeah, he's still a Nazir. He just doesn't have to atone for that. For that failure of the Naziritude. Okay. So who wants to start reading again? Parak 14. Starting to see some stories about Shimshon.
I thought the thing about a Nazir was they're not allowed to marry. I don't know why.
Oh no, Nazirim can marry, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the only people in Judaism who are discouraged from marrying for a positive reason is, according to the story in the Torah where Aharon and Miriam talk smack about Moshe. According to some interpretations of that, a prophet should not be, let's just say, actively married if they want to be ready to receive prophecy at any time.
Yeah, it's probably because it was monastic, and I said, right.
Yeah.
What about Moshe?
Exactly, Moshe. Moshe is the main example of a prophet who, at least according to some interpretations of that story, separated from his wife in order to be always ready to receive prophecy.
He was married before he became.
Yes.
He stepped into the prophecies.
Yeah.
So.
Marriage is a good thing.
And then she disappears as his children do.
Yes. True.
Once Shimshon went down to Timnah, and while in Timnah he noticed a girl among the Philistine women. On his return he told his father and mother, I noticed one of the Philistine women in Timnah. Please get her for me as a wife. His father and mother said to him, Is there no one among the daughters of your own kinsmen and among all our people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Shimshon answered his father, Get me that one, for she is the one that pleases me.
Okay. What's going on?
Rebel. All this suppression, all these years that he can't do anything, he's finally rebelling.
Okay. Maybe he's rebelling. This is very not what we expect from a shofet.
He's a little spoiled.
Spoiled.
Spoiled? How so?
His whole life.
He wants what he wants.
Okay, so he wants what he wants, but does he
Pushing.
want what he wants because he's used to getting what he wants, or because he is not used to getting what he
He's never
wants,
got
and now he
anything he
can now he thinks he can get it.
Yeah.
But what he wants is to marry a Philistine woman, and the Plishtim have been ruling over and oppressing the Israelites for a few decades by now.
Yeah.
So this isn't just your sort of run-of-the-mill intermarriage that we have nowadays, where two people fall in love and it doesn't really matter to them, and so, okay, let's get married, yay, happy, whatever. This is within a context of war and oppression. And he says, I want her, even though she's the enemy.
She's my oppressor.
Yeah.
You just have to look down the sentence.
His father and mother did not realize that this was the Lord's doing. He was seeking a pretext against the Philistines, for the Philistines were ruling over Israel at that time. So Shimshon and his father and mother went down to Timnah.
Okay, thank you. So let's look back at our commentary sheet, where Ralbag Gersonides is trying to understand what's going on here. Does Shimshon not actually love this woman? Whose pretext is this? What does that mean? So he says, and he came up with a clever plan to find a justification to smite the Plishtim. He chose to marry a woman from the Plishtim because in that way he calculated that he would attain his goal. Our sages said that he converted her first, because God forbid that a judge of Israel would defile himself with a Plishti woman and violate the prohibition in the Torah against intermarriage, especially since he is a Nazir of God.
Our sages said.
Our sages said.
Which sages said?
I don't know specifically, but it's the way he refers to it is probably an opinion that's found either in the Gemara or in a Midrash. So it's the rabbis of the Talmudic period, who typically like to see our heroes in Tanakh as positive figures as much as possible. And so they find it inconceivable that he would actually marry a Plishti woman, break the laws of the Torah, when he's a Nazir. Especially when he's a Nazir and a Shofet.
So she doesn't have much to do with the conversion. You know, it's not like she had a sincere epiphany and decided to convert. He converted her.
Right. Right, we don't know anything about her feelings on the matter, her commitment. They're trying to find a way to say that she was Jewish. She was Israelite somehow. So somehow he got her to convert. But it wasn't even about her. It was about him trying to manipulate the situation such that he would pick a fight with her people.
So when it said it was God's doing, I always have issues with that. Like, it's like, so does God take away his free will at that point and just manipulate him? There's there's other stories like this. So.
Right. I mean, when an occurrence is attributed to God, I mean, that's always the question. Is it God specifically stepping in and saying, I'm going to move these people around like chess figures? I'm going to control them to make sure things happen the way I want to? Or is it God sort of pulling strings behind the scenes and arranging matters so that the desired outcome will just happen out of the people's own free will? The real question for me, though, that I was wondering, and that I don't know if there's a good answer for, is that when it says, To'ana hu mevakesh, he was seeking a pretext against the Philistines. Is he God, or is he Shimshon? So the commentary here from Rabbi assumes it's Shimshon.
Right.
That Shimshon is making the calculations, Shimshon is making the plans and the plots. It could just as easily be that God is arranging matters in order to make this conflict occur. But he goes with his parents down to Timnah to marry this woman. Who wants to continue reading?
Is it here?
Yep.
When he came to the vineyards of Timnah, a full-grown lion came roaring at him. The Spirit of the Lord gripped him, and he tore him asunder with his bare hands, as one might tear a kid asunder. But he did not tell his father and mother what he had done. Then he went down and spoke to the woman, and she pleased Shimshon.
Okay, thank you. So this is first sort of heroic victory. He's attacked by a lion, and he rips it apart. I've never tried ripping apart a baby goat with my bare hands, but I guess it's much easier to do that than to do it to a lion.
I've had kittens that scratch me up pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Why were you killing kittens?
That's the death.
I'm just saying they scratch me up.
They usually live in the jungle.
Okay. So a lion attacks him. He kills it. He wins. He hangs out with his girlfriend. Where did this all happen?
In a vineyard.
Timnah.
In the vineyard.
In a vineyard.
In a vineyard, right.
The grapes.
The grapes. What's he doing in a vineyard?
Aha, he's supposed to be
Passing
away from the
through?
grapes.
He's supposed to be staying away from grapes and wine and anything made out of grapes and anything that's been soaking in grapes. And he's hanging out
He's lying around.
in vineyards. He's lying around. Thank you. Very nice.
I
was waiting for you to
roared
do
at that.
You were. I have a lot of pride from these puns.
No, there was only one there.
Let's go back to the main
It's a
conversation.
roaring good
Nice.
story.
Yeah. Okay, so he's hanging out in vineyards, dating this Plishti woman, ripping apart this lion with his bare hands. And when he comes back the following year to marry her, he goes and visits the scene of his victory in the vineyard.
So, wait, I don't mean to be funny here, but when it says she pleased him, does that means he had sexual relations with her?
I doubt it, because in Hebrew it's just Vatishar be'einei Shimshon.
That's what we
She
were talking
was
about on Saturday, where he waited a year.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
she was
You couldn't see.
literally it says she was upright in his eyes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not a physical pleasuring. Okay. So he finds in the lion's skeleton a swarm of bees and some honey. So he scoops it out and he eats it. Dead lion honey.
Since when are bees attracted to lion?
There are bees that eat meat. I don't know enough about
They may
bees.
not be
Jackets, I don't know about
honey-producing
bees,
bees.
but yellow jackets do. But
Oh,
they're
really?
wasps.
Yeah, but they don't
Okay.
make. They don't make honey.
You know, the ones you think are bees, they have
Yeah.
yellow stripes on them.
Yeah.
But they look waspy. They're really
Yeah,
wasps.
they come out
Okay.
in the
But they
summer
eat
and
meat.
eat.
They'll fight you for your chicken sandwich in the
Yeah.
summer, if you're eating outside.
But they don't make honey.
No, because they're
not
wasps.
honeybees.
Okay, so it could just be that they made a nest in the skeleton. Like they're not
Later.
they're not really doing anything. Yeah, it's a year later. It's probably decomposed. Just a nice place to put a nest.
it's good. In the skull.
So he rejoins his father and mother. He shares his honey with them, but he doesn't tell them where it came from because they might be grossed out.
So that's contact with the dead. Was he supposed? So that's contact with the dead. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be
It's
dead
not
either.
a dead human, so it's okay.
But if there were bees that ate the flesh of the lion is not a kosher animal,
right.
so he's eating honey made from
Bees aren't kosher either.
no.
Right, but
And yet,
the honey
Honey
is.
is.
But the
yes,
hu-
it's one of the
honey-
paradoxes of kashrut.
remember, it's a vineyard. The bees are
Yeah.
Buzzing
flying in the
around
vineyard.
grapes.
That's where the honey's coming from, not from
Bees aren't kosher.
from the
I
lion.
never thought of that. Bees aren't kosher. That's true.
I don't think you'd want to eat a bee.
What's
No, but the honey.
what's another one?
Honey, otherwise known as bee crab.
Another one that milk and meat both come from the same source, but they're only kosher separate from each other. If you bring them back together,
They're not kosher.
then they're not kosher anymore.
But chicken, you don't have any chicken milk.
True.
Chicken used to be
The
part of
Karaites,
that one
yeah.
time, wasn't it?
Right.
According to the Gemara, in some communities they held it that way, but they lost.
Apparently.
Oh, so there's a dissenting view.
Yes. It was attributed, I think, to the sage named Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, that in his town they considered birds to be parva.
So it's chicken parmesan's on.
If you lived 2,000 years ago in Rabbi Yosei HaGalili's town, I guess.
Time machine would come in very handy.
Yes. Okay, so Pasuk 10. His father came down to the woman. Shimshon made a feast there, as young men used to do. He's a very typical young man. You see, eating honey out of dead lions, ripping them apart, marrying women just to pick up fight. So they designate 30 companions to be with him. And Shimshon says, "Let me propound a riddle to you. If you can give me the right answer during the 7 days of the feast, I shall give you 30 linen tunics and 30 sets of clothing."
There's this 30 stuff again.
Yeah.
Is he
Well,
ask-
enough for all the companions. These are his wedding buddies. "But if you are not able to tell it to me, you must give me 30 linen tunics and 30 sets of clothing." And they said to him, "Ask your riddle, and we will listen." So he said to them, "Me'ha'ochel yatsa ma'achal, u'me'azm yatsa maso." Out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet.
A talk.
This was the lion with the beehive.
Yes.
Yeah. Out of the lion came
Oh,
something.
that's one reason the lion didn't fight so hard. He had a beehive in his stomach. It's got to be uncomfortable.
Out of the eater came something to eat.
Honey. Oh, I assume he's referring.
Yeah, the eater is the lion, the something to eat is the honey, the lion is strong, and the sweet is the honey. Is this a riddle? Have any of you read The Hobbit or seen the movie recently?
Not recently.
Okay, so in The Hobbit, the title character, Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit, has a riddle contest with Gollum in his deep, dark, underground lake in order to save his life. And they tell each other these very nice, poetic old school sounding riddles where the answer is things like mountains and time and eggs and stuff like that. And in the end, Bilbo is under pressure and he has to ask a question and he can't think of a real riddle and he just goes, "Oh, what's in my pocket?" Because he's sort of talking to himself, and then he says it out loud, and Gollum thinks it's a riddle, and says, "Okay, I'll answer it," and then can't figure it out. But it's not a riddle. What's in my pocket is not a riddle. You can't figure it out without knowing the realia.
Mm-hmm.
So similarly, this isn't a riddle. It's not a riddle like
You have
figure
to
out
have
the logic.
experience that he had.
You had to have encountered the lion that he killed in the vineyard with the bees
Right,
and the
right,
honey
right,
in it in order to know that that's what he's referring to.
Okay. So they had no chance.
Right, they had no chance.
Right.
It's like
It's a setup.
it's a setup. It's a
You just
setup.
wanted
It's a
new
pretext.
clothing.
Right. I'm just surprised that they fell for it. Because it's not a riddle. They should have just said, like, this isn't a riddle.
Maybe they didn't know then.
Maybe they thought it was a real riddle and they were trying to answer it like a riddle. Could be. Okay, so who'd like to continue reading? Pazuk 15 on the 7th day.
Jeff, you're kind of up.
It was
Sometime later.
Well,
Oh,
right here,
that's chapter
yeah,
15.
14, 15.
Page 5.
On
Bottom
the
of-
seventh day, they said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband to provide us with the answer to the riddle. Else we shall put you and your father's household to the fire. Have you invited us here in order to impoverish us?" And Samson's wife harassed him with tears, and she said, "You really hate me. You don't love me. You asked me a countryman a riddle, and you didn't tell me the answer." He replied, "I haven't even told my father and my mother. Shall I tell you?" During the rest of the 7 days of the feast, she continued to harass him with her tears. The seventh day he told her because she nagged him so. She's good. And she explained the riddle to her countrymen. On the 7th day before sunset, the talisman said to him, "What is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion?" He responded, "Had you not plowed with my heifer?"
Oh my God.
You would not have.
Oh, I thought we'd stop right there. It sounded interesting.
Nah,
is really
it's a comma. That's only half of it.
That's horrible.
Had
would
you
not
not
have guessed my riddle.
had you not plowed with my heifer, you would not have guessed my riddle. As the kids say, shots fired.
Spirit of the Lord gripped me. He went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of its men.
Oh.
He stripped them and gave the sets of clothing to those who had answered the riddle. He left in a rage for his father's house. Samson's wife then married one of those who had been his wedding companion.
Okay.
Wow.
Happy ending all around.
Life is
Except for those 30 men that
In Ashkelon, right.
Unnamed.
Right, the 30 unnamed men in Ashkelon. Ashkelon is a city of the Plishtim. And so in order to pay his debt, that these 30 Plishti guys answered the riddle, he goes and he kills a bunch of other Plishtim, takes their stuff, and gives it to them, instead of paying up himself. Had you not plowed with my heifer? This is
That means what I think it means.
Yes.
could be. I mean,
it's just,
it definitely means something having to do with her.
yeah, and
The question is how
see,
far and exactly what he was accusing them of.
call her a heifer. It's just, I mean, I know I'm a modern day, but it's,
Oh yeah,
That's a very
cows.
good cow.
Cows in the ancient world, at least in the ancient Near East, were not seen negatively.
great.
Like if you call someone a cow today, that's negative. That's an insult.
Yeah.
I think if you described people this way back then, it's not necessarily as negative. For instance, the Egel Hazahav, the golden calf. Like we think calf, oh, it's a cute little baby cow hanging out with its mom. It isn't. Young bulls were symbols of power. So the symbolism of cows, female cows, isn't the same as we have today. It could just be a term of endearment.
I really read it if you hadn't messed with my wife. But
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what it means.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you hadn't messed with my wife.
Even plowed is pretty severe.
pretty obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
Using her.
Even plowed with my wife.
But this
Oh.
15 is. And in the Bible are just horrendous.
So his wife isn't still his wife, is it? I mean,
No.
Oh,
She's now
Well,
married
he
to
doesn't
someone else.
necessarily think that she isn't.
so later Samson came to visit his wife and brought a kid as a gift.
Yep. Okay, so what does he do? He wants to bring her a gift.
Same wife?
Yep, seemingly so.
now she's married somebody else, right?
Right, and that's what her father says.
Mhm.
I was sure that you had taken a dislike to her. You got rid of her. You ran away. You left. You were mad. You killed people. So I gave her to your wedding companion, somebody else. But her younger sister is more beautiful than she. Let her become your wife instead.
The old younger sister trick.
Yep, and how does Shimshon respond?
Their history.
Their history. They have no claim against me anymore. They keep on insulting me. They marry me to this woman who then sells me out. And now they want to do it again. After they marry her to somebody else. He's just looking for excuses. So what does he do? He caught 300 foxes, took torches, and turning the foxes tail to tail, placed a torch between each pair of tails. He lit the torches and turned the foxes loose among the standing grain of the Philistines, setting fire to stacked grain, standing grain, vineyards, and olive trees.
The terrorist.
Yes. Shimshon is basically a terrorist. He is a freedom fighter, fighting against the oppressors of his people, using methods designed to instill fear in the population whom he's
Gideon did
targeting. Huh?
Gideon did that in the first battle.
Yes, but
Among the
Gideon was
hordes?
attacking the army specifically. So he was definitely using psychological warfare, but it doesn't seem as terroristic
Yeah, it's-
as Shimshon just attacking the fields, attacking the people in the town.
You caught 300 fox.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could have been in the fur business.
How do you get them all to stand tail to tail?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a question.
Well,
if you hit 300,
maybe you
then
tie them
can
together. You tie their tails. Tie their tails around the
By the
torch.
time the rope burns off, the foxes are gone.
Yeah, but
No, I mean you
meanwhile,
tie their tails.
Their tails are on fire,
Not with
so
rope,
they roam
with their
around and
tails.
set everything else on fire.
Yeah. Okay, so of course the police team want to know who did this. They get told, oh, it was Shimshon, son-in-law of the Timnite, who took Shimshon's wife and gave her to someone else. So then, what do?
Barbecue.
Barbecue.
Oh,
So they take it out on his semi-ex-wife and semi-ex-father-in-law.
okay. So that's interesting.
Right. They get it from all sides. I mean, she got convinced by the locals to find the answer to the riddle and betray Shimshon and give it to them. And now, because the police team are mad at him, they take it out on her also.
Or are they just mad because he's raging
He was
terror,
mad,
and then they're blaming her for that, for him raging terror? They're not really mad at him. They're just saying she's the reason he's doing this,
Yeah.
Besides, they're Philistines.
right?
Okay. Could be.
And besides, they're Philistines. Okay.
Okay, but his response is, we're going to escalate instead of de-escalate the situation.
Who, Shimshon?
Yep, if that's how you act, Pasuk 7, I will not rest until I have taken revenge on you.
Oh, okay.
And he gave them a sound and thorough thrashing.
biblical for whoop their butts.
What?
It's biblical for whoop their butts.
Yes. Okay.
Is he somewhat, and I don't want to say immortal, but I mean, he's not, is he invincible at this point?
So far, seemingly so.
All right.
He's super strong. He performs absurd feats of animal control.
300 foxes
Yeah.
suddenly appeared.
And he's fighting a one-man battle
Yeah, and he's winning.
against the whole people. Yeah, and he's winning.
Yeah. He's not getting hurt at all.
Yep. Okay, now things get a little bit more complicated. Because what happens when you have a vigilante or a terrorist running around attacking your people?
Airstrike.
Okay, so you can airstrike. What else can you do if you want to get them, if they're coming from a different national group?
You can attack their people.
Okay, you can attack their people.
Yeah.
Okay, so who wants to read? Pasuk 9.
The Philistines came up, pitched camp in Judah, and spread out over Lehi. The men of Judah asked, "Why have you come up against us?" They answered, "We have come to take Samson prisoner and to do to him as he did to us."
Okay, thank you. So what do? They're like, oh, Shimshon is an Israelite, so let's go mess with the Israelites. The nearby tribe is Yehudah. So let's go force them to turn him in. So what do? Thereupon,
3,000 men of Judah went down to the cave of the rock of Etam, and they said to Samson, "You knew that the Philistines rule over us. Why have you done this to us?" He replied, "As they did to me, so I did to them." "We have come down," they told him, "to take you prisoner and to hand you over to the Philistines."
okay, let's pause here. So, there's also something that happens when you have a vigilante or a terrorist or some member of a group who is out of control and you want to neutralize them. You go and get their own people to do the dirty work for you. And so the Plishtim go up to Yehudah, they assert their authority and say, hey, we've come for Shimshon. And the people in Yehudah are very explicit when they talk to Shimshon. They say, listen, the Plishtim are in charge. They want you, and we're not going to stand in their way. Okay. But how does Shimshon respond?
"But swear to me," said Samson to them, "that you yourselves will not attack me." "We won't," they replied. "We will only take you prisoner and hand you over to them. We will not slay you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he reached Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Thereupon the Spirit of the Lord gripped him, and the ropes on his arm became like flax that catches fire. The bonds melted off his hands. He came upon a fresh jawbone of an ass, and he picked it up, and with it he killed 1,000 men. Then Samson said, "With the jaw of an ass, mass upon mass, with the jaw of an ass I've slain 1,000 men." As he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone away. Hence that place was called Ramath Lehi.
Okay, thank you.
In my book it says it's called Jawbone Hill.
Yes, Ramat Lehi.
Lehi, Jawbone Hill.
Yeah, Lehi is the jawbone, the jaw. And Ramah is rise or height. Okay,
So is there anything special about a jawbone, or just, it has the, it's something heavy to use for a club?
I don't know if there's anything special about it and symbolic about it in particular.
It's got a shape.
It's got a shape. The shape might be good to grip.
Similar to the
Yeah, sort of
sword.
like a sword. Yeah. Sort of scimitar shaped. He's sort of like hulking out on them.
It's a little.
Steroid rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
No raise.
He's sort of,
Well, I mean, he set it up,
uh-huh.
the whole thing. So
Yeah.
he knew what. Why does he not want? I mean, maybe this is answered later. He tells his people not to the Israelites not to just to keep to bring him and not do anything. Does he want to take all the honor for killing 1,000 men?
Could be. I mean, I don't know if they would have done anything. Like, he wants them to not try and hurt him.
Oh,
He wants them to just play their role, go along with what the Plishtim want, and he'll take care of it.
At that time, the Spirit of the Lord wasn't on him. It only came
Right.
on him when he was
they turned
presented
him
to
over.
the police team.
And so, interestingly enough, this place Lehi, which keeps on being referred to as Lehi, like over and over again, in the course of this episode, we only find out at the end that it's named after this incident itself.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting.
I think the next line is a clue
Okay.
why it's called Jawbone Hill and such.
Okay.
It says he becomes thirsty,
Right.
right? Well, growing up, there used to be a television show called Tales of Death Valley, and they showed a picture of a cow,
Okay.
right? But it was a cow's skull because they die of thirst in the desert.
Yeah, this is
And
sponsored by
is-
20 Mule Team Borax.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's right there.
So
Yeah,
I
right
suspect
up
this is an
in-
elevated desert area where there isn't water, and animals die of thirst, and they deteriorate. And what's left? They're bones, and there are bones around the area. And he grabs up the jawbone of the ass. So it's Jawbone Hill because there's all kinds of bones in the area, and he easily reaches down, finds a bone, and beats the crap out of the Philistines.
Could be. That makes sense.
Solves one bony problem.
Time for a beer.
Okay. So, there it goes. I mean, he's he's killing people. He's using the people of Yehuda, sort of letting them play their role without getting them in trouble, but doing all the killing for them, for himself. Slaughtering the Plishtim with irregular weapons. Okay. Perek Tetzain, 16. Once Shimshon went to Gaza, another Plishti city. There he met a prostitute and slept with her. Like, really? Really?
Didn't even
He's
hesitate. He just like right in the first
We
pursuit.
can't drink, we gotta do something.
Right, he's a Nazir, he's a Shofet, like Ralbag says, like, really? This is what he's doing? Come on.
Deteriorating.
Huh?
He's deteriorating.
Well,
He
his
doesn't
wife
seem to have
didn't
much
stay
res-
converted for very long.
He doesn't have much restraint in any of these stories.
True. He doesn't have much restraint. He doesn't restrain his strength, he doesn't restrain his desires. But he seems to be channeling them in ways which get towards his goal of releasing Bnei Israel from Plishti oppression. And so he's in Gaza, and the people there find out that he came for this one-night stand. They an ambush for him at the town gate. They plan to kill him. In that Pasuk 3, at midnight he got up, grasped the doors of the town gate together with the two gateposts, and pulled them out along with the bar. Why does he need to do that?
Gates were closed.
They were closed and locked. So, okay, if you can't open the gate, you can just pick it up. So he picks up the gate, places them on his shoulders, and carried them off to the top of the hill that is near Hebron.
Quite away from Gaza.
Quite away from Gaza, very true. And so once again, he's putting himself in questionable, sketchy circumstances, which then end up to his advantage in terms of breaking the strength of the Plishtim.
He doesn't hurt anybody.
Right, in this case, he doesn't seem to kill anyone or hurt anybody. But soon, his heart will be broken. Again. Okay. Do you want to read? Someone else want to read?
Anybody else want to read?
Pasuk 4.
You haven't read it, have you?
No.
After that.
Pasuk 4.
Yeah.
It happened after this that he loved a woman from Sorek Brook. Her name was Delilah. The governors of the Philistines went up to her and said to her, "Entice him and find out by what means his strength is so great, and by what means we may overpower him, so that we may bind him and to afflict him, and each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver."
Okay. So, he's done with his previous wife. She's been burned in both a metaphorical and literal sense. And now his new love interest is Delilah, who he meets in a place called Nahal Sorek. If you look on your commentary sheet, we have here a definition from the classic Brown Driver Briggs Dictionary of Tanakhic Hebrew.
BDB.
The BDB, yes.
Brown Tribal Briggs Lexicon.
Where it points out that Sorek means a choice, a specially good species of grapevine.
He's hanging out.
He's hanging out with the grapevines again. This isn't a vineyard. This is a nahal, a wadi, a stream which is named after these very nice grapes. Assumingly they grew on the banks or something, and that's where he goes, and that's where he falls in love again. With Delilah, who is also approached by the Plishti leaders in order to help them get one over on Shimshon.
Should I continue?
Yeah.
So Delilah says to Samson, "Please tell me what makes your strength so great, and how you could be bound to afflict you." So he told her, "If they bind me with 7 wet twines that have never been dried, I will become weak and be like any other man." So the governors of the Philistines then brought her 7 wet twines that had never been dried, and she bound him with them. And then there was an ambush party sitting in her room. She said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he snapped the twines as flax straw snaps when it smells fire, and his full strength was not even apparent. Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me how you can be bound." And he said to her, "If they bind me up with new ropes, which work was never done, then I will become weak and be like any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and bound with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And the ambush party was sitting in the room, and Samson snapped them off in his arms like thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Up to now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you can be bound." He said to her, "If you weave 7 locks of my head into a weaving rod," she fastened. He told her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into a weaving rod, she fastened it with peg of a loom. She said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He awoke from his sleep and tore out the peg of the loom and the weaving rod. She said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? This makes 3 times that you have mocked me and not told me what makes your strength so great." It happened that after she tormented him with her words every day and pressed him, he became exasperated to death. So he told her all that was in his heart, and said to her, "A razor has never gone upon my head, for I am a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I will be shaven, my strength will leave me, I will become weak, and like any other man." Delilah saw that he had told her all that was in her heart, so she sent and summoned the governors of the Philistines, saying, "Come upon this time, for he has told me all that was in his heart." So the governors of the Philistines came up and brought up the money in their hands. She lulled him to sleep on her knees, and she called over the man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head, thus beginning to afflict him. And his strength departed from him, and she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He awoke from his sleep, and he said to himself, "I will go out to fight like every other time." And he rose myself, but he did not know that Hashem had departed from him.
Okay. Let's pause here.
Not too bright.
It's like unbelievable.
Every single time, she asks him, so what would be the secret that someone would use if they wanted to tie you up and beat you up and you couldn't fight back? And he tells her.
Every time.
And she does it.
I know.
And she does it. And somehow,
At some point you get less sympathetic.
in the end, he tells her the real secret. And he just tells her. Like, what is this? What does it actually mean?
And, like, he did the same thing with his first wife. He finally, after enough nagging.
Sholamut. He was wearied to death.
Yeah.
Maybe he's strong but stupid.
He's pretty clever. He's definitely clever
But
in some ways.
she's more clever than he is.
But nagging is a weakness for him because he finally gives out.
Right.
She's not nagging.
Maybe he's
She
tired
just-
of the burden.
I know they
asking
say-
him every day.
Tired
Yeah,
of the
but
burden of
he's
being
tired of the burden?
judge, and in this eternal struggle, and
I'm with you on that
he's
one.
got this woman that he loves,
But it was
but
Hetty
he
Lamont.
knows
She was gorgeous.
she keeps turning him in,
Right.
and he's tired of that, and it's enough already, and he's just giving up. Sounds like he just gave up.
But when he wakes up, he intends to fight.
Right.
Because he didn't realize that God was no longer with him.
Right.
Now,
But he gave her the secret.
Yeah, but he
But you
doesn't
know
really
what?
know.
He didn't know the secret.
Yeah, he really doesn't know it's a secret. His mother tells him when he's a little kid, "Never cut your hair," and "I'm never going to cut your
before
hair
that,
because you're a
he had
Nazarene."
said
Oh.
something about the 7 locks.
That's a possibility.
And
What is
she
it?
pinned it with the peg and cried to him.
He's
Right,
been-
but that wasn't it.
No,
That was
But
in,
where
when he was reading in 13.
Right.
She said, and he answered her, "If you weave 7 locks of my head into the web," and she pinned it with a peg, but that time he,
Right, because then she's just attaching his hair to the loom. She's not cutting it off.
Right.
But David and Ed are right. Where before this
Yeah.
have they ever mentioned that his strength came from his hair?
The strength comes from God.
Right.
Okay.
But
He's eating
he
grapes.
knows, but he says,
But he's
he
doing
says,
everything else.
if my hair were cut,
Right.
my strength would be...
But
good
he's
point.
eating grapes,
That's his
So-
point.
and he doesn't lose his
He's,
strength.
That was
well, he's
David's
not
point.
explicitly
That's a good
eating
point.
the grapes.
He's
hanging out in the vineyard.
In the vineyards, but he's
Okay.
not doing
He's
the grapes.
definitely sketching around the boundaries if he isn't actually.
He's certainly
crossing.
around a lot of dead people.
And he's having
killing
sex
them.
with prostitutes.
Very
so,
true.
not supposed to eat grapes, not supposed to be around dead, and not supposed to cut your hair. Well, the other 2 didn't fail him. Why should he think this is going to fail him?
So you think he told her the secret unintentionally, that he thought he was making it up?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So he thought he was fooling her.
No, he just thought he didn't know. He didn't really know where his strength was coming from. He didn't know that if he didn't know that if he cut his hair that he would
I think
That
it's
God
closer.
would no longer
usurp
be
his
with him.
strength. Yeah.
Yeah, I
He
think
knew
it's closer. He knew where his strength came from. He just didn't realize that. He didn't think that, in as much as his strength, he kept his strength through all the other trials, that he could tell the secret, and then his, it wouldn't matter. His strength would be there. But now it's not.
Didn't know what his kryptonite was.
Yeah.
That makes it even more
Or put it this
ironic,
way.
though, because he
this way.
says, "Oh yeah, this is the secret,"
That's right.
and it actually is.
Right.
And you're saying that he didn't really
Well,
understand.
nowhere
We didn't
before
believe
that,
it.
unless you show us. I mean, I'm not challenging you. I'm just asking you to show us. Nowhere before this does it say anything about if you cut your hair, you're going to lose your strength.
Right.
see, he knows it. If my hair were cut, my strength would leave me.
Right, but that's why I think it's fascinating that they're suggesting that he was joking. He
wasn't joking.
realized that it was
just
true.
pulling stuff out of his head.
If you bind my
Right, he didn't
hands with
realize it was true.
unused ropes or wet ropes, my strength will leave me.
But he might have, you're saying that
He
he
just-
thought that was true?
He was just randomly picking things up.
He was
just to-
randomly
he just
picking
was
things.
making
Right.
it
This
run
time,
around the
yeah,
block.
And this time it was the wrong thing to
No, but-
randomly come up with.
But
That
this
makes
time,
sense. I never thought of that.
yeah, except this time he was wearied to death. The other times he was just brushing her off. This time he couldn't take it anymore, so he confided everything to her. It says that, so he must have known.
How
At
would he
what
know?
point do you find another girl?
Maybe he had a hunch, but how could he know? Nobody ever cut his hair. He'd never lost his strength before.
And maybe it was just known that, among the Israelites, that if your razor never touches your head, that it's just common knowledge that that's your status as a Nazir.
He knew the new
If
ropes
we-
wouldn't work. He had been through those before with the people of Judah.
If we go back to the first announcement of the angel tells Shimshon's mom, chapter 13, Pasuk 4, be careful not to drink wine or any other intoxicant or to eat anything unclean, for you are going to conceive and bear a son. Let no razor touch his head, for the boy is to be a Nazirite to God from the womb on.
Mm-hmm.
He shall be the first to deliver Israel from the Philistines.
Okay.
So I don't think it's inconceivable that they understood there to be a connection between he's a Nazir, he can't cut his hair, and he's going to rescue us from the Plishtim.
Yeah, but he's been pushing the boundaries all this time.
Right.
So this
Right.
one was just one more, and he's been okay.
He pushed too far.
Right, but it turns out that this was the last thing the angel said right before he's going to rescue us, and now this is actually the secret.
But no previous Nazirite has ever had super strength before,
Right.
right?
No,
In
but
every
none was
demonstration of
consecrated for life.
Yeah. But every demonstration of his strength was preceded by the Lord filled him with, or the Lord gave him with it. Lord was with him.
Again, he wasn't there for all that either.
Right.
We don't know anything about the other Nazirites.
Right. Okay.
I think we know about there were Nazirites in
Tearing
the
out,
desert.
gone tomorrow.
But you
There
know
were
what?
Nazirs in the desert, right, with monkeys.
He's going to defeat him.
Possibly.
In the opera, they
I don't
all.
know, I can't think of any specific examples, but I mean,
I
he
think that was
gets
the
the
whole,
law.
I think that was the
to.
whole point of the description of what a Nazir was because people were becoming Nazirs.
Okay. Okay, so I'm fascinated by your suggestion, but I'm
interesting.
not
You're
completely
skeptical.
convinced.
No, okay.
Skeptical.
That's fine.
Maybe.
That makes it much more ironic and like tragic.
Yeah.
This whole
I think he did
anti-hero
know. I think he
thing.
did
It's
know
like,
because
oh
he-
yeah, blah blah blah. Oops. Turns out I
knows
was
what He's
right.
doing. Maybe he thinks. Maybe he has a death wish.
So maybe
Because
that's what it
that's
means.
his death-
Tiksarnaf Sholamut.
Which means what?
I'm weary of all this.
His literally
Where did
his
that?
soul was shortened to die. He lost his patience. He was wearied to death, as the translation here has it. So maybe he has a death wish. Maybe he's tired of fighting.
Tired of being a Nazarite.
Right? Maybe he's tired of being an Nazarite.
He was tired of her. She nagged him to death.
It was Delilah.
No, but his death wish is what's going to get them.
It was Delilah, though.
But it's even stronger. Maybe his will to hold out had already atrophied. And so he gives up the secret, intentionally or unintentionally. And it works. So, Pasuk 21.
And his choice in women.
Yeah, his choice in women. Huh?
Should have stuck with the prostitutes.
Yeah.
Should have dated Jewish girls.
It's another
Yeah, they
good.
don't act.
So Delilah is never identified specifically as a Plishti woman. So we don't know if she was one of the Philistines or if she was from Bnei Israel and she was just working with them like the people from Yehuda were.
But in the opera,
Okay.
she's like a really grand. I mean, she's not just some homely
No.
living in a hut.
Well, she probably wouldn't be homely living in a hut.
in the
If
movie-
Shimshon, like this is Shimshon. Shimshon,
In the movie with Victor Mature and Hedy Lamarr, she's pretty hot.
She was in Headley.
She was.
Okay, so
Let's see.
Pasuk 21.
Edward
It gets worse.
Huh?
Was Edward Horowitz something with Helamar's real name?
Oh, was it?
No, it was in Blazing Saddles. It was,
Oh, yeah.
Harvey Korman was Headley, and everyone called him Heady. He says, no, Headley. This is a running joke.
Okay, Pasuk 21.
Should I continue?
Sure.
Okay. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him in copper fetters. He was made to grind grain in prison. The hair of his head began to sprout after he had been shaven. The governors of the Philistines gathered to make a great sacrifice to their god Dagon. And for the celebration they said, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. The people saw him and praised their God, for they said, our God has delivered into our hand of our enemy, our enemy, and the destroyer of our land, the one who increased the numbers of the slain. It happened when their heart became merry that they said, summon Samson and let him entertain us. They summoned Samson from the prison, and he sported before them. They stood him between the pillars.
Okay, let's pause
Samson
here.
said to the boy who was holding
Let's
his
pause
hand,
here. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so they've got Shimshon. They make him blind. They bring him back to Gaza, where he had his previous encounter. And now instead of breaking out of the city, he's now chained inside the prison. They make him work for them, and now they're so happy that they want to have a special religious celebration. They're really happy about capturing this one guy. It's all about him. He was so dangerous. He killed so many of them. Like, that's what they say. Hirbat Halalenu, who slew so many of us. And they're so happy just about capturing Shimshon that they throw this huge religious celebration.
King Tov.
Well, where?
It says they were so happy.
Yeah, Lahik Tov. Ketov Libam. Their hearts were happy. Their spirits rose, as it's translated here. Alright. And so they pull him out of prison. They want to see him. They want to gloat. They want to make him entertain them. And then, what happens? Someone else want to read now? We can.
Now the temple was, is that where we are? Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were some 3,000 men and women on the roof watching Samson dance. Then Samson called to the Lord, O Lord God, please remember me and give me strength just this once. O God, to take revenge of the Philistines, if only for one of my two eyes. He embraced the two middle pillars that the temple rested upon, one with his right arm, one with his left, and leaned against them. Samson cried, let me die with the Philistines, and he pulled with all his might. The temple came crashing down on the lords and all the people in it. Those who were slain by him as he died outnumber those who had been slain by him when he lived. His brothers and all his father's household came down and carried him up and buried him in the tomb of his father Manoah between Zorah and Eshtaol. He had led Israel for 20 years. I thought it was a little more.
You said 20.
Yeah, but it said 20 years, and then he met Delilah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's built into those.
Probably the same
I never
20
got the
years.
sense that he actually led Israel. He was just,
Yeah.
Good
a
point.
strong guy.
He doesn't have followers. He doesn't have an army.
In fact, the
He's
people
just
turned
him.
in.
But he was a force against the
He
Philistines.
said a heck of a
True.
So if he was the force against the Philistines, they stepped back and Israel flourished. Got to do what they wanted to do because the Philistines were now afraid.
See, it's-
Possibly, and
It said-
maybe later on, because the people from Yehudah definitely don't feel free.
It said he had
Well,
led at the end before 16.
Yeah.
it says he led Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. And then he has this whole thing with Delilah. I guess that didn't take long because
No,
it's still 20
His hair
years.
started to grow back. It was the time that it took for his hair to start to grow back. So that couldn't
And
have
he's
taken-
not, yeah.
couldn't have taken very long.
So that's a good point. And he's not really leading
Right.
once he's with Delilah and getting captured.
Did he bring Israel back to God? Can we
Doesn't
attribute that at all?
It doesn't say that
That's
at
a whole-
all.
That's different than the other stories.
Right.
It doesn't say that they were in good shape for another 40 years or
Yeah.
anything.
Right. It just says he led. And he didn't even lead them.
Yeah.
He led in the sense that he was out in front fighting all the battles, beating up on the police team, and everyone else was just sort of hanging back, and maybe sometimes they were on his side, and other times we know they were not on his side.
But there's no movement of armies where land was taken or anything like that.
Right. This
We
is,
don't even, God doesn't even comment at the end here. We don't even know if he's happy or not.
right.
What's Shaphat?
Right?
Shafat is the verb of shofet. So he judged, he led,
Okay. So but he was hardly a judge. I mean, if anybody made
not his character.
stupid,
his judgment. was it?
yes,
Okay.
judgments, it's him.
Right, so he makes a lot of bad judgment calls, but he's also pretty clever in his manipulations.
Yeah, he's a manipulator.
I still think the word judge isn't in the same context
No, it's
that we
not.
have. But
Right.
he
No,
is
definitely.
judging the Philistines evil and punishing them.
But it doesn't say that he judged the Philistines evil and punished them. It says he judged Israel,
Okay. But I
which is weird because every definition of judge we have, whether it's judge in a court, whether it's instructor of law, whether it's just a military chieftain, he's not doing any of it. He's a one-man army. He's using terrorist tactics on his own without the backup of the people.
Almost not even premeditated. It's all almost really very reactionary. All his actions.
Plus, whenever there's contact with the
He
people,
just
he
like
gets
Well, there
mad.
is some
and the people want
premeditation
to
there
turn him
because
in.
he
He's
planned on
clever,
doing
yeah.
this.
He plans it.
Yes.
But he hulks out, as it were, when the Ruach Hashem, the Spirit of God, takes him over.
it's clobbering time.
Yeah. But he
According to a super-
whatever he's doing, it doesn't really seem like a form of leadership.
Yeah.
Um,
Seems like a very tortured individual.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
definitely at the end. And so this is
Hormones or something.
Yeah, he
Right.
said steroids, man.
Steroids, yeah.
Okay.
right. And so this is the second half of the book of Shoftim. In the transition from Gidon to Yiftach, with all those parallels about how they grew up and their encounters with Ephraim, that once we cross that mirror, everything starts to fall apart. Yiftach was a hero, but he made a few really bad mistakes. Shimshon, on the one hand, is a hero. He's a freedom fighter, but he's also a terrorist and not living up to his personal religious obligations. And yet he's fighting this on behalf of the people with the power of God.
Well, up to this point, the Philistines are making the Israelites' life miserable.
Right.
And now
How
he's
are they
making the
miserable?
Philistines' life
There haven't
miserable.
been much.
Right.
There hasn't been much discussion about how miserable. I mean, the Egyptians made them a lot more miserable. I don't remember reading a whole lot about
Well,
how
just at
miserable.
the beginning of the story, it just says it. It just states it.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it doesn't give the details. It just says, if we take the model of the previous descriptions, either they were attacking them personally
Well-
or they were taking their stuff. We actually know in the beginning of Shmuel that when the Plishtim had power over the Israelites, they would not allow us to make weapons. There were like no Israelite blacksmiths.
That's why he had to use the jawbone of an ass.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But
Could be, yeah, makes
meanwhile,
sense.
during,
If they started that by now, yeah.
at some point, the Benjamites are living in Jerusalem,
You're right.
which is funny because when David goes there, he never mentions any Benjamites there. But they're,
Right. So that's a good question about what happened with there. Maybe they moved out at the end, or maybe he conquered the non-Israel part of the city. But this whole period, everyone's sort of mixed together. They're mixed around, and they're influencing each other, and they're fighting each other sometimes. And
Apparently, if
and sometimes they're marrying
Judah
each
is-
other.
I mean, it's hard
Judah
to
is-
believe that there could be so many people in such a tiny
Judah
house.
is arresting a Danite,
Yeah.
right, with Samson,
Of course.
and really they're just playing into Samson's hand.
Right.
Please give me to them,
True.
you know. So, I want to judge them.
Right.
I think there's more to this judge thing than meets the eye. I'll look for more definitions.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Got one more class coming up.
One more class?
Yeah.
One more?
There are a lot of pages to cover in one more class.
Yeah. We're not going to do
We're
the
gonna read
whole
fast.
rest of
I went
it.
to high school with Philistine. I didn't like her either.
So when does the next section start?